Welcome, everyone, and thank you all for joining us for this event, Invisible Violence, Suffocating Silence, Legal Frameworks and Communal Cultivation of Gender Justice. As we delve further into this year's CSW priority theme of ensuring and strengthening access to justice for all women and girls, this event seeks to highlight both the challenges women face around the world in this regard and promising initiatives for eliminating discrimination and the myriad obstacles to obtaining fair, just, and gender-responsive justice. According to UN Women's Report, 30 years after Beijing, we know that no country has achieved full legal equality for women. Simply put, this means that in every corner of the world, laws still treat women and men differently. Women have fewer rights than men by law. These legal gaps decide who is protected, who is believed, who can claim their rights, and whose version of events carries power. This is how impunity takes root, beyond the law, through narratives that downplay violence and violation, that doubt women, that excuse those who cause harm. Legal gaps leave women with fewer rights than men and greater barriers to justice. This makes justice unequal by design. Today, we have gathered the experts, women sharing their lived experience of attempting to access justice, women accompanying and advocating for and with them through the justice system, and women taking the long journey to justice with support of legal defenders and their solidarity with each other to face the barriers to obtaining justice and finally hold perpetrators accountable. We know that the barriers are steep and often overlapping when women and girls seek justice. And we will hear about this from our speakers and about their work to overcome these barriers through the law and other structural accountability mechanisms, popular education, and normalization of dialogue about gender stereotypes and the infringements on the rights and dignity of women and girls. Access to justice matters. Justice for women and girls means safety, protecting them from further harm, the dignity of being heard, believed, and respected. Repair with access to remedies, support, and reparations. And prevention, stopping violence before it happens again. Every woman and girl has the right to justice. Challenging impunity is one of the most important things we can do. It sends a clear message. Violence and injustice will not be ignored. Accountability disrupts repeat abuse and makes violence harder to excuse or normalize. Access to justice doesn't just resolve cases, it changes lives. And so we are so grateful to have our panelists here today from various regions, Guatemala, Republic of Congo, India, and South Africa, whom our moderator, Despina Aphrodite Malaki, will now introduce. Thank you again for being with us, and special thanks to our interpreters, Daniel and Jessica.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. It is my pleasure to moderate this discussion, and I would like to thank all of our distinguished speakers for their time to be here with us. Today, as Anne-Marie mentioned, we will hear from the experts, and I hope you all enjoy a fruitful discussion. We are so grateful for your participation. As we move forward, I will not offer full introductions to each of our wonderful speakers on this panel. In the interest of time, their bios will be in the chat box for all of you who I'm sure are interested in learning more about our speakers. With that being said, and without further ado, I would like to open this panel discussion, and I would like to introduce to you our first speaker of the day, Ms. Ana Grace Cabrera Cordon, the coordinator of Women, Peace and Security and Humanitarian Action Area of UN Women in Guatemala. Thank you, Ana, for accepting our invitation. It is a distinct honor to have you here with us today. You have extensive experience in working to protect women from sexual exploitation and abuse, and in advocating for women survivors of conflict. So for many years, sexual violence in Guatemala's conflict remained largely invisible. And in February 2016, a Guatemalan court with a historic verdict ruled that sexual violence, sexual slavery, and domestic slavery committed against certain indigenous women during the country's internal armed conflict constituted international crimes. What was the most significant factor in the women's decision to come forward to file their case after so many years? And how did this verdict transform the legal and social understanding of sexual violence during Guatemala's armed conflict? Did the court simply punish individual perpetrators, or did it fundamentally change how wartime violence against women is interpreted?
Desponia, thank you very much for your important questions, which I will answer. But first, let me take just 1 minute to thank you all for being here. And of course, particularly thank the sponsors, Justice Coalition of Religions, International Presentation Association, Missionaries of Mary Immaculate, and Passionists International. Let me thank you all for inviting us to share the experience of 15 Quechua women, now called the Abuelas of the Sepulsarco case, which endured during their lifetime not only a life in deprivation, but also during the internal armed conflict, as you rightly pointed out, Despoina. They suffered from, they faced slavery in sexual and domestic slavery during a period of time. Your first question in terms of what was the most significant factor in women's decisions to come forward to file their cases after so many years. Let me begin saying that the case was opened in 10/11, and as you rightly pointed out, the sentence came out in 2018, but the case started long before that. In 2004, a group of feminist investigators decided to investigate the issue of sexual violence during the internal armed conflict. As the peace accords were signed in Guatemala in 1996, a commission of truth was established, and they noticed that sexual violence against women during the internal armed conflict was not properly registered. This was due, of course, of the lack of consciousness on the one hand, but also and particularly because women were not ready to break silence. And by the way, I love the title of our initiative, Invisible Violence, Suffocating Silence, Legal Frameworks and Communal Cultivation of Gender Justice, because this is what we've done with the Sepulsarco case, actually. But coming back to the case, what happened is that this investigation opened the floor for women first to understand that sexual and confirm that sexual violence was present before, during, and after the massacres that took place during the internal armed conflict in Guatemala. Second, that this was not an isolated case. as they kept silent for so many years, they didn't understand that this happened commonly and generally to most of the women, and not only to them. They have carried in their silence, they have carried their pain inside. They did not open to talk about it, of course, because of they were afraid of the prejudice and the the exposure they will have because of that. And they were also afraid that their families will reject them, as most of them did, of course. And so this investigation opened the floor for women to talk freely in a safe environment. And I'm sorry, I have kittens. and then as they started opening to talk about it, they realized they were not alone. They realized that they were not the only survivors, but mainly that they had other women that would support them during their breaking the silence. We had like 3 moments, and I will try to make it very shortly, but I want to guide you through these 3 moments. The first one was when they broke their public silence. And this was, it was called, the initiative was called Festival on the Memoir of Women in War Times. And for the first time, women from all over the Guatemalan territory, I have to say we have 24 different ethno-linguistic groups, and they came together. And although they spoke in each of their mother tongues, mother languages, I was there, and it was amazing how we could understand what they were saying. Because I think that, as the abuelas of the Sepur Sarco case say, they were speaking a common language, which is the language of justice, which is the language of truth, which was the language of peace. And for the first time, they broke silence. And after that, they adopted what they called the Huehuetenango Declaration on the Dignification of the Victims. And they declared that they wanted to go through through the streets, and they wanted to walk in public settings with their heads up, knowing that they are not to blame for what had happened to them, but they were victims, and their perpetrators were the ones that should have the blame, as the very strong case of Mrs. Pellicot has taught us. So this would be why they decided to break silence. And in 2010, we had an international consciousness trial on sexual violence during internal armed conflict in Guatemala, which is kind of like a mock trial to showcase not only the difficult times women were facing, but also the need for them to access justice. In that consciousness trial, 30 cases were presented. Some of the women decided to go through other paths, like community reparations, or community, we say in Spanish, sanarse, healing, right? Rather than going through the path of justice. But the Sepur Sarco abuelas decided to go and present their case to justice. They also decided to present it in the national court because of the path to seek international support and justice would require to prove that they couldn't find a response in the national court, should that be the case. But it's a good example, and it's the first they opened the path, and I would say that after some years in the court, 12 what we call peritajes, but it's like legal advisory papers for the court, where we discussed in those legal papers how sexual violence affected women directly. And not only, let's say, we talked about a very important aspect of trials, particularly when we talk about sexual violence related to conflict, and that's the credibility principle. And I would say that this credibility principle was present not only in the courts, but in all of the actors that we were involved in this trial, or in this, I would say, initiative for justice, which let's say supersedes the trial per se. Women believed in themselves, so that's credibility. The investigators, the prosecutors believed in women, and that is credibility. The judges believed in their testimonies, and that also is credibility. But I always put the example of UN Women. When I met these women in 2006, they had already started the process of thinking of justice, on visualizing justice for them and for the rest of women that have been, let's say, have faced this type of crime. And in that sense, I recall that I said we need to support them, but this support is not, this is very hard to understand, because of course when the trial was on, everybody wanted to support, but the support needs to be provided for long-term. We have to commit for long-term support when we are thinking of providing guidance and accompanying survivors, because this is not 5 years. It's been 10 years since the sentence now, and we are still supporting the case. And at that time, it was 2006. Can you imagine how many years have passed? And we are still there with them, because it's a long-term commitment. Women cannot, in 3 years, recover. Women cannot ask for justice and have it in 2 years. Sometimes these processes are very long, and women need to ensure that they will be accompanied, and not only in the sense of social accompaniment, but also, of course, legal accompaniment, political accompaniment, and protection accompaniment. They need these 3 aspects to be present in their lives before, during, and after the trial. So UN Women also, I was thinking, because I was new with UN Women, and I was thinking, how will I transfer that preoccupation, that concern, but also that great responsibility? And I found that my colleagues also applied the credibility principle. And this is why I had the great opportunity, the great honor of accompanying the survivors, the abuelas, the grandmothers, during this whole period of time. And I've learned with them, and I've grown a better human being with them. So this is how we've changed. We've changed from a collective silence to a collective learning, to a collective building up spaces and understanding that the truth liberates, but also bringing justice for these women represented a hope for all women all over the world, and the certainty that no matter how many years have passed, evidence is there. So we innovated a lot with these peritages that I was telling you about. We had, for example, the credibility peritage. We had the cultural peritage, which was very important because in every culture, women represent honor, women represent life, women represent community coherence, and they are greatly and differently affected when sexual violence occurs, as we all know. So this peritage permitted to understand, for the court to understand, and of course the public in general, how their culture, how their communities were affected through their slavery and domestic for sexual and domestic abuse. Your second question in terms of how did the Sepur-Sarko verdict transform the legal and social understanding of sexual violence? Of course, after there have been trials in the past related to conflict-related violence and human rights violations, but the trials were not concentrated in sexual violence. And I think that the judicialization of this case, particularly this case, showed how women experience different human rights violations during conflicts. But they also confirm, as I said, that no matter how many years have passed, there is evidence. Like, for example, one of the peritages that we did was the digitalization of the site, and we showed in 3-dimensional using digital or I would say in, artificial intelligence on how events happened. The soil remained some of the how would I say that the proofs were in the soil. So we had a long let's say a long discussion on the litigation strategy, and this is another learning experience. I remember when women started the case, when they put the case they presented the case to the courts. Let's say the great lawyers and academics, mainly men, I have to say, I'm sorry, were trying to guide women on what to say, on how to do it, on how to litigate, on how to investigate. But actually, and this is very important because most of the actors in the case were women. Women were the survivors, but women were also accompanying them through their NGOs, and they were terrific because they listened to them. So all the litigation strategy came from the abuelas, not from everybody else, not from the academics. They were guiding what we were doing. And this is very, very important as well, because when we say, it's easy to say a victim-centered approach, but the victim-centered approach comes from the respect and from the listening to what women want, to what women think, to what women see as a future. So also this is very, very important. And in terms of strategic litigation, as you may know, the case is being studied by several universities, both in the Americas, but also in Europe and Asia Pacific at least. So this changed a lot. And then I'll move to the third question because of timing, which says, did the court simply punish individual perpetrators, or did it fundamentally change how war crime violence against women is interpreted? The Sepur Sarko case is the first case in the world to have a dignified and transforming reparation sentence. So the sentence, of course, condemned two of the perpetrators at the, let's say, high level of military structures, and the reparation sentence had 18 measures. 2 of them individualized, but the remaining 16 were community-based measures that claimed, I can't say restored the rights, because probably they never had the chance to exercise their rights properly in the community, but they asserted the rights of the community to education, to health, to cultural support, to achieve the highest level of development. So and of course also there are other measures that are called the non-repetition measures, including training to military in terms of women's human rights. And what the abuelas have asked is for sexual violence not to happen again to anybody. So, for example, they have come to New York, where most of you are sitting now, to address the General Assembly and to ask for stopping violence against women. They have also gone to Geneva to talk to the Human Rights Council and showcase how sexual violence affects women, but also how women can achieve justice. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anna, for sharing so many aspects of this case and in such great detail. I would like to reemphasize the credibility principle that you mentioned. It was very, very important to hear you saying that women believed in themselves and prosecutors and judges believed in women. And as you said, we have to move from collective silence to collective learning. The Sepur Zarco case is a landmark decision, as you mentioned, as it is the only case of conflict-related sexual and domestic slavery, a crime of international persecution to be tried in a national court. And it also established reparations for the survivors. So this case has set a precedent for women of the world to advance rights, to advance justice and action, and has inspired, I'm sure, national policies accordingly. So I would like to relay my deepest appreciation and thanks to you for sharing this case with us today. And I would like now to move to invite our next speaker of the day, Sister Rhyta Kimani, a Passionist sister originally from the Republic of Congo, to take the floor. Sister Rhyta, you are an expert in international labor and gender law, a human rights activist, and an author of several articles and books. So in many African societies, women live between two powerful systems, two powerful realities. The law, the formal law, which may promise equality, education, protection, and freedom from violence, and the social reality of customs, family structures, and community pressures that shape everyday life far more directly. So based on your experience, how can rights guaranteed by law lose their force under the heavy pressure of culture, tradition, and social expectation? Sister Rhyta, you have the floor.
Merci beaucoup pour l'octroi de la parole.
Thank
Merci
you
aussi
very
pour
much for giving me the
l'invitation
floor, and thanks for
à
your
cette
invitation as
conférence.
well
Et
to
donc,
this
moi, je voulais
conference.
bien commencer mon
I would
exposé
like to
avec une petite
start
vidéo que
my
j'ai balancée à
intervention with a
Thérèse.
short
Je ne sais pas
video
si elle peut
I've
le
sent to
balancer
Sister
dans le groupe,
Teresa.
sinon
Teresa, could you please share the video?
une vidéo introductive de ma
That
thématique.
is an introduction video for my topic.
Dans une société où les femmes sont censées être
In
dociles et
society where
silencieuses,
women are
le
expected to
silence
be
est
docile and
devenu
silent,
une norme.
suffocating silence
Mais
becomes
derrière
the
ce
norm.
silence et les rires
But behind
ironiques,
that silence
semble
and
qu'on
the
est
laughter,
étouffé. Une chaîne
there's a stigma,
culpable nous,
chain that
un
binds
mur
wax,
invisible qui
an
bloque la
invisible
voix.
wall that blocks the
Un
voice,
sourire,
a
mais nos
smile,
yeux disent le contraire.
yet the eyes tell a different
Comment
story.
faire pour faire sortir la
How
femme
can we
de
free
ce
women
silence étouffant
from
et
suffocating
passer
silence?
en rendant effective
Well,
le prêt
by
global?
enforcing the law.
En divulguant la loi,
By enforcing the law,
pour guérir les violences,
we can prevent
protéger
violence,
les victimes
we can
et
protect victims,
responsabiliser les auteurs.
hold perpetrators accountable.
Merci beaucoup, Thérèse, pour
Thank
ce
you very
service
much,
que tu m'as
Teresa,
rendu.
for this
Et donc,
service.
en regardant déjà ma vidéo,
And
j'ai
so
vraiment introduit mon thème qui
I
parle
was
d'hommes.
able to introduce my topic through
Il y a
this
quelqu'un qui
video.
déclare? Daniel?
Is there any open microphone? Sorry, we can hear a
Je peux
noise
continuer?
in the background. Shall I continue?
OK.
Please, Sister Rita, yes, continue.
OK. OK. Donc, j'ai des
Okay,
slides que
so
j'avais préparés
I
aussi.
have some
Donc, je
slides
préfère,
I
si
have
Thérèse peut les
prepared
balancer.
to show you.
Et
Teresa, could you please launch the
en fait,
presentation?
en s'inspirant donc du thème
So
du 8 mars de
I got
cette année,
inspiration
droit,
of
justice,
this
action pour
year,
toutes les femmes et les filles.
right,
Je me suis
justice
donc
and action
posé
for
la
all
question de
women
savoir
and girls. I wondered
si les droits, on ne les connaît pas, il est difficile
if
de
we do
pouvoir
not
initier
know,
des
right,
actions pour
it
les
is difficult
revendiquer.
to set actions in
Et
order
alors,
to
comment connaître
advocate for
ces
these
droits?
rights. So, in order to
Quelles sont
know
les
these
stratégies
rights,
qui peuvent
what are the
permettre aux
strategies
femmes de pouvoir
that may
revendiquer leurs
allow
droits?
women
C'est pour cela
to
donc j'ai intitulé mon
advocate for
thème
the
sur la
rights? This is
coexistence
why
entre droit positif et droit
my
coutumier,
topic
silence
is the
erroné, comme vient de le
coexistence
parler
of
déjà
positive
avec la
law and
première
customary law.
intervenante qui a parlé du silence
As
erroné,
the
mais
first
aussi
speaker
étouffant chez la jeune
said,
femme
we have
africaine.
this invisible violence and
Alors, vous
suffocating
avez en face de
silence,
vous deux
something that is
images.
present in Africa.
La
I have
première,
two
c'est un
pictures here
sourire.
for you. The first is a
Et la
smile,
deuxième, c'est une
and the second
tristesse.
image is a sadness.
Le sourire, justement, il faut le renforcer. Certainement, nous pouvons être
Smile
souriants quand
should
les
be
choses marchent bien
strengthened.
autour de nous.
When things are
Et quand les
positive
choses ne
around
marchent
us,
pas bien
we
autour de
can
nous, il y a la
smile.
tristesse. Et
But
cette
when things are
tristesse,
wrong,
donc,
there is
peut
sadness,
constituer des
and this
chaînes
sadness
que j'ai
may
annoncées dans la
be
vidéo
a
qu'il faudra pouvoir
chain, the chain you
détacher
have
pour
seen
que
in the
toutes les
video,
femmes de notre société puissent vivre
something
heureuses.
that should be broken
Alors, dans le
so that
contexte
all
du Congo
women may
Brazza,
live
pour répondre
happily.
rapidement à la
So,
première
in order
question qui
to
m'avait
answer to the
été
first
posée
question
sur
that
les
was
progrès
asked
nationaux en
on
matière des droits
national
de
progress
femmes en République du
as
Congo,
for rights
eh
in
bien,
the
nous
Republic,
parlons donc de deux
Democratic Republic
progrès,
of Congo.
eu égard au temps qui m'est accordé.
Well,
Le premier, c'est le
the
train
first
Mwebara,
progress is a
et le
Mwebara
deuxième
train,
progrès,
and
c'est
the
la stratégie
second
de
is
l'ouverture des centres
the
d'assistance ou
strategy
encore des centres
of
d'écoute.
opening counseling
Quand
centers
nous
or
ouvrons la page de l'ONU Femmes,
When we open the
il y a une phrase qui m'a
UN
beaucoup
Women
intéressée.
website,
Il
we
est
can
écrit,
see a very
les droits ne
interesting
signifient
sentence.
rien si nous ne pouvons pas les
Right does not
défendre.
mean a thing if
Ça,
we
c'est dans le
cannot
site de
protect
l'ONU Femmes,
it.
j'ai trouvé cette phrase
That
très
is
intéressante.
on
Donc,
the
les
UN
droits
Women
ne
website,
signifient
and it
rien
is quite
si nous ne
interesting.
pouvons pas les
Right
défendre.
does
Et
not
donc,
mean
pour
anything
les
if we
défendre,
cannot
il faut les
protect it.
connaître.
So in
Au
order
Congo
to
Brazzaville, à
protect
travers ce
rights,
qu'on appelle
we
le
need
train
to know
Mouebara,
that.
on est
Thanks
arrivé
to
à
Train Mubarak in
divulguer
Congo
donc la loi
Brazzaville,
qui
we were
protège les femmes
able
contre
to
les violences.
have
La
the law
question qu'on peut se
protecting women
poser, donc,
against
c'est de
violence. So
savoir,
the question
mais
is,
c'est quoi le train Mouebara?
what
Et
is
quelle
the
est
Mubarak train?
l'originalité de ce train? Parce que
What
ça fait
is
vraiment l'actualité au Congo-Brazzaville.
the
Et puis,
new aspect
qu'est-ce qu'on peut
of this
retenir de
Mubarak
ce
train,
train?
and what
Alors,
can we
retenons
keep
que le
from
train
this
Mouebara,
thing?
c'est une
Well,
stratégie qui a
Mubarak
été
train is a
inventée au
strategy, national strategy
Congo-Brazzaville
that was
pour
invented in
mettre
Congo
en place la loi
to
Mouebara qui
implement
protège les femmes
Mubarak law,
contre les violences
protecting
sexuelles.
women against the
Et
sexual
ce qui est
violence.
intéressant, c'est que c'est pour la
And what
première
is
fois depuis
interesting
que
is
le
that for the
Congo est
first time
Congo,
since
qu'une
the
loi a
Congo
été
became the
mise en
Congo,
exergue pour
a
protéger
law
les
has
femmes
been
congolaises
applied
contre
to
toutes les
protect
formes de violence.
Congolese women against all forms
Alors,
of
je vous
violence.
invite donc à entrer dans ce
I would
train
like
que
to
vous voyez
invite
devant
you
vous
to
pour que nous puissions
take this
savoir
train
ensemble
so
quelle
that
est
we may
la merveille
see
de ce train. En fait, la
together
merveille de ce train, c'est quoi?
what
C'est que
is amazing in
ce
this train.
train
So
parcourt
this
toutes les
train
régions de la République du Congo
goes
pour
through
pouvoir
all the regions in
divulguer la
Congo,
loi qui protège les
so
femmes.
to raise awareness on the
Et
law protecting
l'objectif
women.
donc de
The objective
ce train-là,
of
c'est de
this train
pouvoir protéger les
is
victimes,
to protect victims,
prévenir les violences et
prevent
responsabiliser les
violence,
auteurs.
and hold
Nous
perpetrators
sommes donc dans
accountable.
le contexte de l'Afrique
We
où
are
à un
in the
certain
context
moment
of
la femme
Africa
est vraiment
where
victime
women
des
are
abus,
real
même dans
victims
son propre
of
foyer.
abuses,
Et qu'est-ce qui se
also
passe?
at
La
home,
femme à un
in
certain
their
moment
family.
préfère
And
se
what
taire. C'est ça que
happens?
j'ai appelé le silence
Women
suffocant.
remain
La
silent.
femme qui est
This is why we
maltraitée dans son
discuss
foyer préfère
suffocating
se taire.
silence. So
Pourquoi?
women
Parce qu'il faut
prefer to
protéger
remain
le
silent.
foyer,
Why? Because
parce
they
qu'il faut
need to
protéger
protect
ses
the
enfants.
family, because they
Donc,
need to
aller
protect
revendiquer
the
qu'on respectons
children.
les lois dans le contexte vraiment du Congo, ce
So in the
n'était pas
context
parmi les
of
priorités de
Congo,
la femme. Et
this
donc,
was not
mine
a
de rien,
priority for
avec
women
la loi
protecting
Mouebara
rights.
et la stratégie du
So,
train
thanks to the
Mouebara,
Mubarak train
beaucoup
and
de
the
femmes se sont
strategy,
réveillées pour se
many
rendre compte,
women
tiens, donc
have
ici, on ne respectait pas mes
awakened.
droits, ici, ça ne
So,
devait pas
saying,
être
if
comme
you do not
ça.
respect my
Et donc, il y a
rights,
beaucoup d'exemples chez nous au
that
Congo, par
is
exemple, une veuve
injustice.
qui
And
ne peut pas
so,
saluer un homme, qui doit rester
in
affamée.
Congo,
Et donc,
this
des
is
pratiques
something
même
really
coutumières
new that
qui font
may
souffrir la femme par le seul fait qu'elle a perdu
help
même un
women
homme.
to
Le
understand
silence
the
du fait que
violences
la femme ne
and
veut pas
to
perdre son
prevent
foyer, la femme
that
veut garder sa dignité pour ne
women
pas exposer
want
son
to
mari, elle
keep their
préfère souffrir dans le
dignity, not to
silence
expose their
et donc
husbands,
accepter ce
so
genre de
they remain
traitement.
silent
Voilà, la
and they
loi
accept
Mouebara
such
vient donc
treatment. But
enlever
thanks
toutes
to the
ces
Mubarak
illusions dans
train,
la tête des femmes
all
pour
these
qu'elles se rendent
ideas
compte que à un certain
are
moment,
changing in
on ne
women's
peut pas
minds.
continuer à rester
So
silencieux,
women
il faut
cannot
pouvoir
keep remaining
s'exprimer.
silent, but
Et
they
donc, c'est
have
dans cette
to
perspective que
express
ce train que
themselves.
vous voyez a
They have to
parcouru
speak up.
beaucoup de régions
This is why this
congolaises
train that you see in a
pour pouvoir
picture has appeared in
vulgariser la
many
loi.
Congo regions so
Alors,
that
l'élément
to
très
spread
intéressant dans
awareness
le
of the
train
law.
Mouebara, qui a même suscité
What is
beaucoup de débats dans
interesting
les réseaux sociaux, c'est le fait que c'est
is
une loi qui
that
est dissuasive.
it is
C'est-à-dire,
a,
toutes
a deterrent law.
les infractions ou encore
So
tout le
all
non-respect des droits de la femme, qu'il
violations,
s'agisse des violences psychologiques,
if it is
morales,
a
physiques, sont
psychological
traduites en
violence,
infractions.
moral violence,
Alors, à un
sexual
certain moment,
violence,
cela a fait un peu peur
becomes
aux
a
hommes,
crime.
mais ça, c'est le côté
So
positif de cette loi,
what is
parce que ça
positive
diminue un peu le
is
nombre de
that
violences à l'égard de la femme.
the
Et
number
non
of
seulement
violences against
le fait
women
que la
have
loi soit
decreased
dissuasive, mais
in time.
elle a élargi les champs des
Women
violences. Dans le contexte du Congo-Brazzaville,
have
de la République du Congo,
understood
j'allais dire, généralement,
the
quand on
meaning
parlait
of
de la
violence
violence, on
in
voit
Congo
plus le
Brazzaville.
sexe. Donc, la violence liée au sexe. Et donc, la
We
loi Mouebara
start
vient apprendre
talking
aux
about the
Congolaises, aux
sexual
Congolais,
violence.
que La violence n'est pas seulement sexuelle, mais une simple
we have to
parole peut
understand
constituer
violence is
aussi
not
une
only
violence.
sexual, but
Une
we may
parole
have
qui
different
blesse, qui
forms
laisse des
of
traces
violence.
psychologiques peut aussi constituer une violence.
We may
Mais
also
aussi
have
un traitement
psychological
dégradant,
violence,
un homme qui frappe trop son mari dans son foyer, cela aussi
or
constitue une
even
forme de violence.
husbands
Et donc
beating
l'élargissement
women, their
de ce champ de
wives,
violence
is a form of
a
physical
beaucoup réveillé
violence.
la
So
conscience des femmes
this
congolaises.
has
Et
raised
enfin,
awareness
il y a l'élément de prise en
of
charge. Je suis
Congolese
contente que la
women.
première intervenante ait parlé de
I'm
ça,
happy the
l'accompagnement.
first
Donc, la
speaker
loi
has
Mwebara
talked
prévoit
about
également
legal
l'accompagnement
accompaniment.
juridique,
It is
la
important to
prise en
be
charge des
accompanied,
victimes.
legally speaking.
Et
It
ça,
is
c'est le côté
important to
positif vraiment de la
accompany
stratégie de la
victims,
loi
and
du
this
trait
is
Mwebara.
an important
En
aspect
dehors, et
of
ce
the
trait d'or ou encore
Primavera
la loi Mwebara
strategy.
entre dans le sens de l'application du
This
protocole de
train
Maputo, que certains vont connaître
becomes
comme
in
défenseur
the
des droits des
application of
femmes,
the
mais
Maputo
aussi de
Protocol,
beaucoup d'autres normes
but
internationales
also
qui
other
défendent les
international
droits de la
norms
femme. Et la
trying to
deuxième
protect
stratégie
women's
nationale qui a
rights.
été inventée en République du Congo
This
parmi tant
strategy
d'autres, je retiens les
is
points d'écoute
just
ou
one
encore
amongst
d'assistance.
other
Et cela
strategies,
trouve son
which are the
origine dans
main
l'article 30 de la loi
points.
Mwebara,
Well,
qui dispose donc que
the
au
law
sein de la République soient
Mwebara
ouvertes beaucoup de centres d'assistance, beaucoup
means
de points
that
d'écoute pour
many
donner la possibilité aux
counseling
femmes
centers are
d'aller,
open
de
for
se faire
women so that
accompagner et
women
de
may go and
s'exprimer.
ask for
Ce n'est que
help
de cette manière qu'on
so
peut
that they
faire
may
face
speak
aux
up,
violences faites à la femme, sous
so
toutes
that they
leurs
may
formes, mais
counter
aussi
all
militer
kind
pour
of
le respect
violence,
des droits
but
de la
also
femme au sein de
ask
la
for
société congolaise.
respect
Voilà un
and
peu ce que je peux dire
acknowledgement within the
en réponse
society.
à la première
This
question
is
que
what
vous
I can
m'avez
say to answer the
posée
first
concernant les
question you
stratégies
asked.
nationales qui ont été
As
mises
for
en
national
œuvre
strategies
pour promouvoir les droits des
adopted
femmes en
to
République
promote
du Congo.
women's rights in DRC.
Et la deuxième question, c'est celle qui se
The
concerne donc
second
les droits.
question,
Comment est-ce que les droits garantis par... Thérèse, on
how
peut aller de l'avant, s'il
rights
te plaît?
are guaranteed? Teresa, could you please go to the next slide?
Comment est-ce
Thank you.
que les droits
So
garantis par la
how
loi peuvent-ils perdre
rights
leur
protected
forme
by the
sous la
law
pression de la culture, de la
can
tradition
be
et des attentes
applied?
sociales? Alors, dans les images que vous voyez,
Well, in the
il y a
picture
d'abord
you
une femme
see,
qui a une chaîne
there is
dans la bouche.
a woman with a chain,
Et la deuxième image,
and the
vous allez
second,
voir qu'une personne est devant un mur. Ça va apparaître
you
après.
see a
Et
person
donc, moi, je
facing
me
a
dis,
wall.
qu'est-ce qui peut
So
donc empêcher
I
cette loi Mwebara ou
wonder
encore
what
d'autres lois
may
internationales
hinder
de pouvoir
Mwebara law
s'appliquer
or
dans le
other
contexte du
international laws to
Congo-Brazzaville?
be
Je
applied
me dis
in
qu'il y a des
DRC.
chaînes
Well,
qui
there
entravent
are
les mots
chains
et il y
blocking
a un
words,
mur qui
and there
bloque
is a
la
wall
voix.
blocking voice.
Alors, en quoi peut constituer ces chaînes? En quoi
So
peut
how
constituer ce
can
mur où la
this
femme crie mais personne
chain
ne
or
l'entend?
this
Où
wall
la
be
femme a une chaîne
broken
mais ne peut donc pas parler?
if a
Eh
woman
bien,
has a chain and
j'ai
cannot
retenu seulement
speak?
trois éléments très clés
Well,
dans le contexte
there
du
are three key
Congo-Brazzaville, mais
elements
même dans
in
beaucoup d'autres pays en
DRC
Afrique.
context, but
C'est
also in
notamment
other
donc la
African
coexistence
countries.
entre le droit
So
positif
this
et le
coexistence
droit
of
coutumier. Qu'est-ce qui se
statutory
passe
law
en fait?
and customary
Dans le
law,
contexte de
what
l'Afrique, les
happens
coutumes
actually in
occupent
Africa?
une place très importante
Customs
au
have an
Congo ou en
important
Afrique.
place,
Et donc, chaque Africain
and
est
so
censé
each
respecter ses coutumes.
African
En
has to
réalité,
respect
les coutumes ne sont pas
those
si mauvaises, ce sont
customs.
des pratiques
Customs
qui
are
nous
not so
aident à se
bad. These
conformer
are practices
en
helping
respect donc
us
de notre
to
culture.
harmonize
Mais seulement à
and
un
be
certain
harmonized within
moment,
our
ces
culture.
ces
But
coutumes-là vont même
these
au-delà
customs
jusqu'à
may
constituer
go
un obstacle
beyond
pour que les
so
lois
that they
puissent être
become an
respectées.
obstacle
Vous
so
savez,
that
je
every
disais même
right
le
is
jour de ma
respected.
soutenance de thèse que à la fin de cette
When I
soutenance,
got my
j'espère que les
degree
Congolais qui
and I
sont
was
présents dans la
discussing my
salle ne
thesis,
vont plus
I
oser
said
dire que la
in the
femme ne
room,
construit pas le
I
village.
said
Et donc,
that
ce sont les adages
they can no
coutumiers chez
longer
nous
say
pour
that a
valoriser
woman
plus
cannot
l'homme que
build a
la femme, où on
village,
dit la femme ne construit pas le
because in the
village.
customs
Ça,
it
c'est très
is
fort.
written that
Ça,
women
c'est très
cannot
fort. Et
build a
donc,
village. That is
ça
quite
fait partie
strong.
des
And
pratiques
so
coutumières qui peuvent constituer un obstacle
this
pour
is
que les
part of
droits
a
soient vraiment respectés.
custom that may
Et puis, à un certain
hinder
moment,
a
la
right to be
femme qui est
respected.
entre le droit civil
Then
et le
a
droit
woman
coutumier
between
se sont
statutory
suffoquées parce que
law
le droit
and
coutumier lui
customary law
demande, quand il y
is
a un problème,
suffocating
de pouvoir
because
soumettre au conseil de la famille, de réunir les deux familles,
she
de trouver la solution.
has to
Et,
be able
et
to
donc, ce n'est
reunite
qu'après
families and to
qu'on
find
peut donc
solutions.
dire
So we can say that women can support their families. In this context, many women remain silent and prefer to suffer while remaining silent, because this is a custom we are forced to comply, to respect cultural customs. But as I've said, all customs are not negative, but many practices are negative, and this means the rights are not respected. And this causes difficulties for women to opt for statutory law or customary law. At a certain point, women had to realize some customs were only there to protect men. And so some practices are negative and they constitute an opposition to respect women's rights. Of course, we can delve into details during the further conversation, but those customs that are badly applied are hindering the law. And so women should find a way to exit that wrong silence. So we may see things going well, but actually women are suffering. So we need to break such chain. The second obstacle is some legal norms that are applied in Congo that may cause inequality and discrimination. I've mentioned Article 75 of the Labor Code in Congo. So, the man has the right to impose his wife. So his wife cannot work unless she has authorization from her husband. So it is a legal norm that exists and that is against the respect of women. Beyond that article, there is also Article 68 of the Labor Code, where it says that women are at the service of their families, they have to take care of their families. So these are already behind us. And this is something that should be changed to create equality between men and women. And also, there is the weakness of the justice system. Why weakness? The first speaker has said that justice is going slow. They needed a lot of years to take a case to court. So it means that justice needs to be strengthened. So it is a chain that has to be broken as well to guarantee women the same rights as men. Also, we have to consider corruption. Legal norms have to be respected, and judges do not have to be corrupted. For those speaking French, this is the book I've written on rights of women. I did research, studying some courts to try and understand the cases that were brought to justice. There were 2-3 courts, but no court was actually dealing with protecting women's rights. So, if you're interested in this book, of course, you may contact me, but it is only in French. So these consequences have negative impact on women's lives, but also on the society. Women are suffering and they are experiencing suffocating silence. You see here pictures of women suffering. If you know Simone de Beauvoir, she used to say, the absence of justice for women is an injustice for all. So if a woman is experiencing suffocating silence and also gives a false smile, it means she lives in invisible inequality. And this means it is injustice. So what does a woman do? She has a real burden on her. So it is like a plant that cannot grow. So inegalities become invisible. When we wish to discuss inegalities in Congo, then we only say, no, it is not true. Here we treat women in the right way. But actually, you can see cases, as the ones have said. And so it is just invisible inegalities. But we need to be in the field to be aware of what is really happening. So what are the strategies that we may propose to promote women's rights in DRC? Well, I would say that we need, first of all, legal strategies. As for legal strategies, we need to promote and enforce the Mobara law, because this is a kind of law that is of difficult application, but we need to enforce national as well as international law to protect women's rights. Another legal strategy is to develop, to promote pro bono work. So try to create legal ad firms to help women protect their rights. Also, as for educational aspect, we need to empower the next generations. So we need to consider the next generation. We are already a past generation, but we need to understand what are the customs that have no longer legal power, so that we may create justice. So for the next generations who are just starting their lives, they need to know their rights, and so it will be easier to promote their rights and to protect their rights and to bring equality in a non-discriminatory society. So we need to empower women's leadership, developing the notion of human capital, so that we may have positive impact for women's life within the society. So to conclude, I would say that not respecting women is a danger for society. Rights have to be understood, but applying them is something else. So women should not suffer in silence, and they need to have the ability to be able to speak up. This is what I can say. As for our topic, thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Sister Rhyta, for your insightful presentation. The DRC's efforts reveal a country that has made meaningful legal and institutional progress, particularly through landmark legislation like the Muabara Act and the development of national strategies and support systems. Progress is evident and significant, but the journey toward full protection and empowerment of women remains ongoing. So thank you again for pointing out the importance of enforcing the law and the significance of raising awareness. We have to know the rights rights in order to be able to advocate for them. Thank you again. And with that, I would like now to move on and present to you a lived experience, a human voice of a young woman who has experienced gender stereotypes and domestic violence in her life. Yet she survived and she's here with us today. Her name is Rozy. She's a Muslim woman from India who was married at the age of 16 to her first cousin through a family arranged marriage. She experienced multiple forms of abuse in her marriage, but also in her community. Sister Sneha, a presentation sister in North India province and an advocate who is practicing law in Delhi High Court, supported her in the healing process. And she's also here with us today to help with a simultaneous translation from Hindu to English. And I deeply thank you, Sneha, for doing this. And thank you for your kindness. And thank you, Rozy, for agreeing to be with us here today. We're all aware that this is not an easy subject or a comfortable matter for you. So we truly appreciate your presence here. And I don't wish to take away from your time. So I'll let you, Rozy, share your testimony on the cultural and legal barriers you experienced.
मेरा नाम रोजी है। मैं एक मुस्लिम महिला हूँ। मेरी शादी 16 साल में कर दी गई थी माँ बाप की मर्जी से। मामा के लड़के से शादी के कुछ दिन के बाद ही उन लोगों ने मुझसे दहेज का मांग करने लगे और हमारे माँ बाप पैसे वाले नहीं हैं, इसकी वजह से हम उनको कुछ नहीं दे पाए। तो बहुत टॉर्चर करते थे वो लोग, मार पिटाई गाली गलौज करते थे। फिर उसके बाद हमने थाने में कंप्लेंट दिया। पुलिस वाले ने हमसे हमारा कोई हेल्प नहीं किया। उसके बाद हम कोर्ट में आए। कोर्ट में आके मैंने केस डाला। केस में मेरे नेहा सिस्टर ने मेरे बहुत हेल्प किया है। केस करने के लिए, साथ देने के लिए कोर्ट में मेरी सिस्टर नेहा ने मेरा बहुत हेल्प किया है। मैं 10 साल से केस लड़ रही हूँ, लेकिन मुझे कोर्ट की ओर से केस मैं जीत चुकी हूँ, लेकिन पुलिस वाले कोई सही से काम नहीं कर रहा है। जज भी कभी छुट्टी पे है, कभी जज बदली हो जा रहे हैं, लंबी लंबी डेट मिल रही है। इसके वजह से मेरा काम नहीं हो पा रहा है जल्दी।
I'll give you the translation. Am I audible?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Rozy Khatton is a Muslim woman from North India, from Delhi. She has said that she's been married when she was at the age of 16 with her first cousin. And she comes from a family of 5 girls. She is 4th number. And she has experienced discrimination from the very childhood, being a girl child from her own family. Therefore, she has been perceived as an unwanted girl child. She has no autonomy in choosing her life partner, therefore reflecting deep-rooted patriarchal norms and gender stereotype prevalent in her community. At very early age, a young girl has been married, and that represents her broader pattern of structural gender inequality, where girls are denied marital right even to decide for her own partner, and also social mobility. She is not educated. As she got married, she has experienced economic violence, emotional and psychological abuse from her husband and in-laws. And her story, what she has narrated right now, is that she has, as she approached the court, she came in touch with Advocate Sister Sneha Gill, who has been given to her as a legal aid counsel from the court. She has experienced social and cultural barriers whereby a woman who is abandoned, woman who is left all alone to fetch for her accommodation, and she has faced financial problem because even her own parents left her to support to her own son. She comes from a family which is poor with no community support for her. Rather, she is seen as a deserted woman. She experiences social exclusion and moral poisoning within her own community. There is moral decisions decided by her own father and in the patriarchal society at large. She reflects that her marital life has been a total failure and hence she came frustrated, broken woman to the court. Now she would describe her access to justice and the difficulties that she has experienced.
में आने के बाद केस डाला कोर्ट में आने के बाद केस डाला केस डालने के बाद मैम ने मेरा बहुत हेल्प किया है और इन्होंने मैं छोटे मोटे काम करती थी घरों में इन्होंने मुझे सिलाई मशीन दिलाई मैं उनसे अपनी छोटी सी दुकान किया है पार्टनरशिप में अपने बच्चे का अपना खर्चा उठाती हूँ मेरा यही मांग है कि कोर्ट जल्दी से जल्दी हमारा हेल्प करे और इतना लंबा केस ना खींचे.
She has gone to the court. Her litigation is over. For last 10 years, we are in the court. We got good orders for domestic violence, whereby she has got an order for right to residence, her right to maintenance, her right to protection. And therefore, she has a protection officer. We also went to family court, whereby we fought her maintenance case, which is in her favor. But she describes that these remain an order to be implemented through execution and limitation of the court proceedings. Her husband has been paying as long as he has been coming to the court. But the time it has come, the case has taken as an execution to implement that order. He had been sent to the prison. Against that order, again he promised and he was brought out. He has paid her for 2 years and for last 5 years, the husband actually is also not paying. Therefore, we continue to be in the court for her execution criminal case. And that is the delay that has taken for last 2 years. No maintenance has been granted by her husband. And Rozy has expressed very beautifully that she learned sewing, which is stitching classes, because she has been going home to home. Cooking, she learned skill, and now through the intervention of Presentation Sisters, Friends of Nano, she has been given a sewing machine, and in partnership with another tailor, she has begun a small tailoring shop through which she's been able to support herself and her husband. And the delay, what she is disturbed, in spite of getting a good orders, a good legal aid counsel to journey with her, she has experienced like a delay in getting her finances from the husband through the court order, She has received in spite of getting strong enforcement of maintenance order from the court, there is still difficulty in implementation, and therefore the machinery, the institution, fails to implement and to go behind the prosecution to implement. And therefore the long delay, the pendency, makes the client frustrated. And therefore the delay in carrying out the legal remedies is almost justice delayed is justice denied. And that is her situation at present, whereby she is taken charge of her life to bring up her son, who is in 8th standard. At this point,
thank you so much. Thank you so much, Sister Sneha. Thank you, Rozy, for speaking out so bravely today. And through Sneha, you have shared crucial aspects and types of gender stereotypes within the Indian society that make us contemplate and think, where are we going? What society are we living in, or where our children will grow? You face stigma within your family and your community. Your own family blamed you for the breakdown of your marriage, not to mention the various barriers you shared that you had to encounter in your attempt to accessing the justice system. But despite all this, despite stigma, despite barriers, you continue to fight for your dignity and for your son's future. And that's why you are a symbol of resilience and courage. And thank you again for this sincere sharing. And Sister Sneha, if I may, you have extensive experience as a lawyer, as an advocate supporting women and young girls in need. So may I kindly ask you to briefly share your struggles and barriers when accessing the judicial system in your country, in your community?
Yeah, I'm very grateful. My experience in the judiciary is one of long pendency in implementing the court orders. Most of my time goes because we have many a times judges being absent. We have to just go and wait, and whereby the client herself has to come, give up her job for that day. And ultimately, when they come to the court, we only say that we will get the next date. So that's a biggest hassle for us, even as legal practitioners, because the pendency, the absent, either the judge or the opposite counselors isn't there, the delay in deciding. And after having decided, my greatest pain is her case. I am fighting for last 10 years. We won her domestic violence case. It's in our favor. And we have also been able to win her case in family court, whereby she's awarded good maintenance. But her husband, with those orders, husband paid only for 2 years. Now for last 3 years, he's absconding. Non-bailable warrants are against him. But he is not coming neither to the court nor the judiciary is able to. The police goes and there's a huge corruption whereby they pay the money and then her husband goes missing. So we have wasted almost 2 years. I go to the court, she comes to the court, and we get frustrated. And therefore, the protection officer, who is a very important part of the Domestic Violence Act, which is passed in 2012, the gaps that the Supreme Court herself has come out in 2025 May case, we the Women and Union of India, they have come out to say that the shelter homes, which are meant to be very important component of the act, has not been realized. Where will Rozy and other women who are thrown away from their husband's house, matrimonial home, and also they are not accepted by their own parents? Society rejects them. So where do these women go? So the state, they were supposed to have set up a shelter homes, a protection home, and the protection officer is meant to follow her, see that the court orders are implemented. So these are serious gaps, and especially it's not one day's job. Even I'm taken up her case 10 years ago. They are victims, so they need to be journeyed. The constant counseling session, psychological support, financial support, emotional support that these women require. The state has not been able to bring in the funding. They require initial funding from the state, whereby they are able to set up a small business in a sheltered, protected home where someone is able to journey with them, counsel them, and give them acceptance, because we are well aware the patriarchal mindset that's in the judiciary, the male judges sitting there, the police that is supposed to implement these court orders, they still look at as a family matter. They are not looking at the rights of women as human rights. They only look at as a conflict of the society, men and women, husband and wife conflict, and it is seen as family affair and not an affair of violation of human rights, abuse. Therefore, what I want to share, friends, here, even though the law, Domestic Violence Act, is spelled out well, but the implementation is still a far-fetched dream. And I want to my reference over here. Supreme Court last year has come out with a very wonderful judgment on We the Women with versus Union of India, giving directions to all the state governments to bring in your shelter homes, support your protection officers, and bring in a support system so that this act really gets enforced and becomes practical, realistic, because more and more domestic violence cases, abuse cases are on the increase. And therefore, the role of awareness, the role of conscientizing men also, that how that violence need to be stopped, conscientizing the male judges, the females to speed up, and also the support system that is required is very, very crucial in order to bring justice to state level, national, and also to the international for lobbying and on their behalf. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sister Sneha, for sharing your experience. And thank you for your continued commitment to improving the lives of women, the most vulnerable people, and ensuring that no one is left behind. And I think adding to what you said, we must not also overlook the emotional toll of this work that you are doing. Advocating for survivors of violence requires not only legal expertise, but also emotional resilience. And despite all these challenges and barriers that you mentioned, your work remains profoundly meaningful. Each case, each voice heard, and each small victory contributes to a broader effort to make the justice system more accessible and more responsive and just for all, especially for those whose voices have too often been silenced. I would like now to move on to our last speaker of the day. It is with great pleasure that I introduce to you Ms. Clarisse Lau, the Senior Program Coordinator of Justice Desk Africa. Clarisse has extensive experience in community-based programs and youth development, while focusing on advancing human rights awareness, gender-based violence prevention, and child protection systems. Thank you, Clarice, for accepting our invitation to participate in this discussion. Can you please describe the South African context regarding the legal and cultural barriers that limit access to justice for women and girls who have experienced both visible and invisible forms of gender-based violence and discrimination? And also, if you can share with us a specific good practice project that Justice Desk Africa has developed and implemented to overcome these challenges in South Africa. Thank you, Clarice.
Hi, thank you so much for introducing me, Spoina, and thank you for having me on this platform. It's really an honor to engage with all of you. So yes, I'm Clarice Lowe, and I'm based all the way in South Africa, in Cape Town, and I am the programs manager at Justice Desk Africa. So yes, in South Africa, the cultural and social barriers we currently face when it comes to implementation even of our programs and dealing with gender-based violence cases is that South Africa, so I'm first going to start with us, we have very strong laws that are implemented in South Africa, and our laws intend to protect women and girls. So for instance, we do have our constitution of South Africa. We have the Domestic Violence Act, which allows survivors to apply for protection orders. And then also we have the Sexual Offences Act, which provides support mechanisms for those that suffered from any violence or discrimination. So however, in South Africa, it's not the absence of our laws. So we have all these great laws in place, but it's the gap between policy and implementation. So for instance, a woman may successfully obtain a protection order, but the enforcement is often weak and violations may be not acted upon or immediately in place if something happens. So for instance, like a survivor may be violated, and then, after that, she must still follow like the route of going to the police station and so forth. So also with our gender-based violence and survivors, we normally experience those secondary trauma that they have to go through. And then just some of the legal and cultural barriers that we do face is the underreporting of GBV cases in South Africa. So for instance, in our townships and our rural areas, survivors may fear in South Africa retaliation, economic loss, because a lot of them sometimes, fear that they will be, the breadwinner will now be locked up or so forth. And then, or any further violence if they do report it. Also, we do face barriers such as police responses when it comes to reporting violence. So some survivors report, being dismissed at police stations when they do try to report these cases. And then also delays in the justice system, which was also touched on by one of the legal professionals, is that sometimes the GBV or sexual offences cases take years for the survivor to complete and years to finalize. So that normally leads to withdrawal of the cases and because of emotional exhaustion. And also access to barriers in rural and undersourced communities. So women need to travel long distances to access courts, to access like your care centers, and also for legal services, often without any financial means. And then cultural and social barriers we experience in South Africa is gender roles. So in some of the communities, male dominance is normalized. So women are expected to be submissive, and making it difficult to challenge abuse or even to speak up when abuse is taking place. And then the stigma and victim blaming. So stigma around, maybe around, to keep the silence to keep the peace, they would normally say, like in the family. So the stigma around it, it's also a barrier we face, that some of our cases go underreported as well. And then also family and community pressure. So women are often encouraged to stay at times in the abusive relationships to maintain a family structure or to avoid bringing shame. And then, as I mentioned earlier, also economic dependence because of the high unemployment rate as well. And sometimes women are these like women that stays at home and they financially dependent on abusive partners. And then also just to say what the impact it has on young girls or on women as well is that increased rates of depression. We often see increased rates of depression taking place, anxiety and trauma, the loss of self-worth. They normally get silenced as well because they do not speak up. So that loss of self-worth and agency take place as well. And then interrupted schooling for girls, and then intergenerational cycles of abuse that continues as well, because at times you would see that the children grow up in abusive households and they would see it as something normal to happen, which is having also a detrimental impact on the emotional well-being. So I would say, just to look at some things in South Africa that we need to improve on, is definitely the stronger enforcement of the laws that we currently have. So for instance, like I mentioned, like immediate responses to police responses to protection order violations, for instance. Also capacity building for people dealing with the direct contact of your or GBV survivors. So training them to have trauma-informed responses when a case is, for instance, reported. And also community-based awareness and prevention programs. I'll explain also later what programs we have in place at Justice Desk Africa, and also engaging young boys and men, because in our communities, we often, at times, we have to think about addressing harmful masculinity norms that's formed within communities as well. And then also just improved access to psychosocial support services for those that suffered gender-based violence or abuse. So then you ask also, Despoina, about a good practice that that we have implemented in Justice Desk Africa. So in like South Africa and also some African continents, we're focusing on what we have. We have 3 flagship programs. So we have a youth ambassador program. We have a Mbukodo program, that is our girls program. Mbukodo means rock. So there's a famous quote that says, when you strike a woman, you strike a rock. So Mbukodo name comes from that word. And then we have an Nsika and Yatemba program, which is focusing on boys, on young boys, addressing toxic masculinity. So just starting with our youth empowerment program, this is where we do rights-based education and awareness. So we equip our participants basically within our 3 programs with the knowledge of the human rights and legal protections for women and girls. So we help them recognize that what is your 30 human rights and how to recognize it and identify when your human rights are being violated. And often when these young girls and boys come to our program, a lot of them do not know their human rights. Also, secondly, at times you would find out that they know visible forms of abuse, but they would have to learn what is invisible forms of abuse, emotional controlling, financial abuse within the family that's not visible. So we also, as I said, we help them to understand what is gender-based violence in both the visible and invisible forms. Also making them aware of reporting mechanisms that is in place and support services. and also to advocate for their rights in schools and communities. So this also sometimes it will look like including handovers of memorandums of understanding to relevant stakeholders to drive change within our communities. So we also focus on confidence building within our girls and boys program for them to learn about self and about leadership. We also encourage girls to use their voice and to seek support. And then a component we have within our programs as well is we provide self-defensing training. So self-defensing to strengthen personal safety and confidence as well. Also, we train our youth ambassadors to have campaigns such as your anti-bullying campaigns, so that their voices can actually be heard within the school, so that we don't only go out and we do training and education, but there's a peer-to-peer support and them trying to transform the minds of their peers that is also youth as well. So these campaigns would normally address early forms of violence, so it's a preventative approach and an empowerment approach, and forms of violence such as intimidation and verbal abuse, and also behaviors that often escalates that affect the girls as well. So also within our boys program, as I mentioned, the same year, we promote respect, we promote accountability, and we also promote positive masculinity. So boys are guided within our programs to understand that strength is not about control or dominance, for instance, but respect, protection, and responsibility, contributing to safe environment for girls to know that they play a role as well to create a safe environment for females. So that is some good practices we have put in place. And ultimately, we want to create safe spaces for boys and girls to speak out. Because before looking at legal frameworks and how legal frameworks or policies come into place, we need to know that there's early intervention and access to justice by firstly starting to use your voice and to advocate for your rights before we even go to a legal system. Also, we want them to recognize early signs of controlling behaviors or manipulative behaviors, and also what is not normal in relationship dynamics in their families. So here we're trying to bridge that gap between awareness and the access to justice, I would say, by sharing information on legal rights and services, encouraging early reporting, and supporting referrals within our programs. So basically, yes, that is like just in a nutshell what we do and what we're trying to encourage within our programs.
Thank you so much, Clarice, for your insights, and I really appreciate your valuable contribution to this discussion today. You have covered a wide array of aspects. The South African context, as you said, reveals a complex reality, a strong legal framework coexisting with deep cultural, social, and economic barriers. And for many women and girls, justice is not only a legal issue, but also a question of safety,
Yes.
dignity, and social acceptance. So addressing these challenges requires more than laws.
Yes.
It demands a transformation of attitudes, institutions,
Yes.
and access to resources, ensuring that both visible and invisible forms of violence are recognized and addressed. And flagship programs and projects like those you shared are particularly significant because they recognize that access to justice is not only about court or laws,
Yes.
but also about empowerment, healing and social transformation. And I like that you empower survivors not just as victims, but as agents of change. So thank you again for your contribution. I'm very well aware that we are over our time. So before I give the floor to Teresa to wrap up this discussion and deliver her closing remarks, I would like to give the opportunity to just for the audience to just share one question if you have for our speakers. If you don't, there is no problem. You can share it afterwards. Is there any question in the audience? Just once, if there is. If not, no worries. We are over our time anyway, so I don't see any hands. So, Teresa, I'll hand you the floor to wrap up this discussion and deliver your closing remarks. From my end, as the moderator, I would like to thank our wonderful speakers for their sharing, for their presentations today. And it was my pleasure to moderate this discussion. So, Teresa, over to you for closing.
Thank you very much to Spina and to all of our excellent, innovative, ingenious, and vivacious speakers who have been with us today. I think you're sharing, though, from so many different corners of the world and from different roles in your various fields of life and study and work, you have shared with us themes that are stretching across different cultures and different contexts. And these themes point out for us important lessons for any person who is concerned with both access to justice for women and assurance that women and girls can enjoy their rights throughout their lifespan. We heard among these themes about the role of isolation in preserving what we described in the title for today as suffocating silence and what keeps violence invisible in many different contexts. And through your sharing, we have heard about the importance of breaking out of that isolation by finding ways to bring, especially women and girls, together, those who have experienced any form of violence themselves, but also their allies who may come from different experiences and backgrounds, especially those with legal expertise and who have the resources or roles in society that allow them to actually be agents of the justice system and to deliver on the promises of good law, good legal codes and policies, and to implement them in a way that is meaningful and transformative. And so you have also highlighted the importance of good leadership in these fields of justice systems, in the world of education, and bringing broader understanding of rights and laws in each society in order to resituate in our own cultural understanding the notion that women's rights are human rights, and to help us understand and to break out of this notion that there is a very specific and narrow way for women to be in the world, and that anything that strays from that narrow definition is unacceptable and to be kept quiet or swept underneath a rug. But through education, we can expand that understanding to allow for women's and girls' ways of being in the world to be as varied and expansive as ways of being that are available culturally to men and boys. And with that freedom, we open pathways out of silence and out of isolation and enable ourselves to engage in bigger conversations and bring more women and girls into important leadership roles in the justice system and develop strong alliances that can result in the long-term commitment to justice and truth and peace that is so essential to the transformation that is sought by all of your work. So I echo thanks that have been shared already for all of the contributions made today. I'm grateful to all of my teammates in organizing the event, especially those from the various members of the Justice Coalition of Religious, especially the Passionists International, the International Presentation Association, the Company of the Daughters of Charity, and the Missionary Oblates of Mary Immaculate, and of course, all of our speakers who have shared their amazing insights and experiences to help us all be part of the collective in favor of justice, truth, and peace. Thank you all very much for your time, for your energy, and for your continued work to support moving beyond silence and invisible violence and into a world of openness and truth and options and justice for all. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you all so
Thank you
much.
so very much. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Likewise.
Thank you to you too.
Wonderful. It was wonderful to come
Thank you.
out.
You indeed. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Brian.
Well done. You're welcome. That was super. Thanks indeed for everything, to everybody involved.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Despina, and to everyone. It was an inspiring morning.
Thank you, Carrie. Thank you so much.
Despina encouraged me to send the story. And Rozy has been fasting and she's emotionally very down when she comes out with her story. She was literally crying 2-3 times when she started because her son is in 8th grade and he has not even seen the father. He has not even had an embrace of the father. So she's torn apart. So just request you that we are with her. She's very grateful for Friends of Nano and for the presentation family who stands by her. Yeah.
Thank you, Sneha.
Thank you, Sneha. I'm
all
humbled by
realize-
your work with her. Oh, sorry, Despina.
No, that's okay, Carrie. I'm sorry. I just wanted to acknowledge that, yeah, we all realized that Rozy was emotional, and it was a really difficult time for her to share her testimony. But we really, really appreciate the fact that she was here and you helped with the translation. So, yeah.
You're so brave. So brave. What an incredible strength you have shared with that woman, Sneha. Thank you so much on behalf of all of us for what you've done for Rozy and for everybody that you do the work for. And all of you. It's humbling to be associated with many of you, and you do such good work. I'm so appreciative.
Thank you so much, Carrie.
I was wondering if we could, I know Anna sent us so many beautiful pictures, even if we could just put up one to show the women who couldn't be here, but if we Is that accessible quickly, or to just put one up? The abuelas of Seprezaka.
Sure. Thank you very much for that, because I think that the photos would be a very nice way to finish the session. And please let me know if you can see them.
Sure.
Now?
You can see
yes.
them.
Yes, yes, Anna.
Okay. So these are the abuelas with some of the people of my team. Do you still see it?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Okay. These are the abuelas. These are the women building peace, some of the women building peace in Guatemala, some of the facts. This is a, how do you say that, an exhibition of the photos of the abuelas. We have a monument for peace. And perhaps I will just tell you about, this is the center, memoir center for women, painted all by women, and where they come and do like spiritual healing. As you can see, we supported this center, and you can actually have a how do you say, a news at UN Women. This is the trial. They were, you know, this is when they made the sentence, and women saluting other women. These are the abuelas in their communities with their grandchildren.
Thank you, Anna.
Thank you. This is a very important moment when they were supporting other women in other trials. So thank you for hosting them.
Thank you, Anna, and thanks big thanks to UN Women for the work they do there. We really appreciate you being here with us today, and thank you for that.
Thank you very much. See you soon, hopefully.
Okay.
Yeah. Until next time.
Thank you all so much. Thank you for being here, all your preparation, everything you shared. It's great. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.